Sluts, whores, and the economics of the Star Trek universe. They go together like chocolate and peanut butter. Now, as I'm sure you folks know, there have been a lot of ruffled feathers over my statements about how we have the most decadent sluts since the fall of Rome. And this never ceases to amuse me, because are they arguing that women aren't slutty nowadays, that Roman sluts were more slutty? Are they arguing that I can't use the word slut, which is really like a blue law advocacy? And given that I hardly swear, I find that intensely amusing. But I thought, reflecting upon it, that it would be worth addressing the difference between sluts and whores. Because I actually have nothing against whores. Whores don't bother me in the least. They're honest people. It's the sluts that I find so offensive, so reprehensible, whom I don't even want to share an elevator with, lest I ask them for a cup of coffee and I suddenly have a false rape accusation made against me. But I think a good way to introduce this topic is using the economics of the Star Trek universe as a metaphor. And before I get to that, though, I want to establish my view of human nature and kind of where we stand as a civilization right now on the whole issue of virtue and reality. Now, see, the thing about humans is that we really are halfway between monkey and angel. You know, like we've got all of this amazing, this magical nature to us, this creativity, this love, this ability to transcend the mere physical. And yet at the same time, we are part of the physical. You know, we all need to eat. We all need to defecate. We have a sexual instinct that needs to be fulfilled. We have ego needs that need to be fulfilled as part of a pack species. And one of the biggest dangers that you can make in pursuing virtue is to ignore the animal, is to try and kill the animal. Because if you think you've killed your shadow self, all you've done is empower it. All you've done is made it sneakier. If you think you've killed the animal is coming back that much stronger. And this time you're not even aware of it. And so it's very important to acknowledge our animal natures, acknowledge the realities of this universe that we find ourselves in. And given the contemporary climate that we have a very puritanical society. Puritanism being the emphasis on the purely angelic side of our natures. Puritanism which despises the material, attacks the material, and tries to make us perfectly holy. You know, this is the spirit that informs communism. This is the spirit that informs social justice. If you ignore reality and try and become perfect, you wind up becoming a perfect monster. And you know, I think the economics of Star Trek, the universe that Gene Roddenberry tried to describe, is a great example of this. Now, the silliness of Star Trek communism has been commented on extensively. You know, they started off with the Next Generation, where you had all of the pious lectures in seasons 1 and 2 about how much superior these humans were now that they got rid of money, how they all just pursue their own betterment for the glory of the human race, and how those silly 20th century people with their money and their greed, they were so completely out of it. And of course, this really starts to break down as soon as you move away from the Starship Enterprise. You know, if you start asking, what does the economy look like on Earth? How do people live? Aside from the minority that are in Starfleet, what point is there to life? Is everybody plugged into a holodeck? Are there a few elites that run vineyards, that run restaurants? When everybody could be getting things from replicators, they could be getting all of their interactions through the holodeck. You start to paint a rather frightening reality. Now, in the series Star Trek Deep Space Nine, they actually explored the insanity of this economic system. And they did this a bit tongue-in-cheek. They didn't go majorly in depth, but there were some excellent conversations between Benjamin Sisko's son and his best friend Nog, who was a Ferengi, who was the straw capitalist. There's a one great quote: "If you humans don't need money, then you certainly don't need my money." When the kid was trying to borrow money to buy his dad a birthday present. So you really see the whole thing just breaking down. And yet, as a vision, if you don't think about it too much, it does seem like a compelling vision. There is something about the Star Trek universe that most geeks and nerds, most intellectuals, even most warriors would find very attractive. That it's not a mercenary universe. It's not a cheap universe. It's a society that seems to have a higher ethos that it's following. And so I think it's worth asking ourselves the question, what was Gene Roddenberry, what was he fighting against with the Star Trek universe, with the Star Trek economy? What was it that Gene Roddenberry found so offensive about the modern era that he wanted to describe an economy that did not have money? And it's not free market economics, although he may have mistaken it for that. It's not greed in the sense of Ayn Rand, that we're all greedy and greed can be a virtue, but rather crass materialism. What Gene Roddenberry found so offensive was a society where people will go do a job they absolutely despise and they'll work 60 hours a week on it, just to buy a whole bunch of toys, to buy a house that's bigger than what they need, to buy multiple, quads to ride on the weekends, even though they never have a free weekend to ride on a quad. People that are mistaking the means for the ends. Money should just be a means to live the way we want to live and do the things we want to do. And yet a lot of people do seem to mistake the money for the ends. And this dog-eat-dog, this rat race society, this consumer culture is really what he was getting at. That on a gut level, he found it very distasteful. And I think we can all agree with him on that. The mistake he made was blaming capitalism for it. You see, capitalism, or free market economics, or whatever you want to call it, money is nothing but an accounting tool. That you need money, you need an economy to ensure that you have effective use of resources. Without money, you wind up having warehouses that are sitting completely empty, while other warehouses have tons of goods in them that are rotting. And you have people that want the goods that aren't getting them. Money keeps things flowing. It keeps people sane. And so really, to achieve the Star Trek universe, what we need is not to eliminate money. What we need is a rising of consciousness amongst the majority of people in our society. We need more people to raise their consciousness level to the point where they realize that, as my friend Captain Capitalism would say, all that really matters in life is other people. Your friends, your family, your parents, your children. Those are the ones that matter. Not working 60 hours a week at a job you hate so you can buy a brand new car every single year to impress a bunch of neighbors who you don't even like. That's not the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to spend it with your loved ones. But at the same time, to maximize our free time, to maximize the economic output, to maximize the amount of energy available for each and every one of us to consume, to maximize that, you need a good accounting system. You need a free market economy. And so my prediction is, if we do move forward towards a Star Trek type world, a world where everybody is focused on bettering themselves, on reading philosophy, on creating art, on exploring things, on doing science, if we move forward to a world that embraces those virtues, it's not going to be communist. It will look like the communist dream, Because in that world, nobody will actually care about money. No more than when you go out with your friends on a Friday night. You don't care about money. You just want to make sure everybody has a beer and everybody has fun. So it will look like that communist society, but I think it will actually be one of the most capitalistic societies that has ever existed. Socialism, the top-down control by a minority who want to dictate how people live, will be completely gone. Because it will be, by its very nature, a society full of individuals who value their freedom and full of individuals who do not want to take away other people's freedoms. Money in the society will be accounting. It'll be largely ignored, but it will be extremely capitalistic at the same time. Now, what does this have to do with sluts and whores? Well, because as I said earlier, we are in such an angelically focused period of history where, partly because of our wealth, partly because of historical forces, we're all trying to be that perfect human being and we're completely ignoring the bottom line. You know, this is why we get guys like Gene Roddenberry that think you can have this glorious future by getting rid of the bottom line. That everybody in Star Trek is a perfect angel because they no longer have money. So what I like to do is focus on the baser animal nature of ourselves. You'll focus on the negativity, the negative according to the angelic viewpoint. You know, this is why in my podcast, In Vegas Veritas, I really focused upon how it's the sinful nature of Las Vegas that makes it such a wonderful city. And so in discussing sluts versus whores, I would start with the premise that all women are whores and that all sex done properly is a financial exchange. Now, this seems very grim and cynical if you've been raised on nothing but Disney cartoons, but it's simply a fact of life. It's no more grim and cynical than saying that if you don't check both ways when you cross the street, you might die. It's no worse than saying if you don't eat, you're going to starve to death. Because of the basic nature of the human mating dance, it is an exchange of sex for resources. Now, this can take many forms, obviously. You know, marriage is just another form of it. Or it can be the prostitute that you hire for a couple of hours, and then, as the joke goes, you pay her to leave. It can be pornography, where you're paying women to get naked on camera. But at the end of the day, the dominant narrative of our sexuality is this exchange of women giving sex and men giving resources. Women giving compassion, men giving status. And yes, of course, these things get extremely complex when you iterate the game several times. You know, the reason I love strategy games is because you start with such simple mathematics. You know, +1, -1. And then you play it out, and it gets incredibly complex. But the basic, the primordial nature of our sex is sex for resources. And thus we get to the problem with sluts. Because unlike a whore, unlike a wife or a prostitute, from whom you know what you're getting, you know, both a prostitute and a wife, those are contracts. I give you this in exchange for that. Yeah, we could certainly have a discussion about whether or not those contracts are always fair, whether some of them are exploitative, or whether women in the present day, or the government, I should say, has reneged the woman's responsibilities under a marital contract. Those are all conversations to be had. But it's still a contract. We're still pursuing that contractual idea of sex for money. Not with the slut, however. See, the problem with sluts, the dangers with sluts, is that they give it away for free. And to quote Heinlein, Tanstaffel. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. So one of the things that sluts exchange sex for, while pretending it's free, they exchange it purely for status. And if you read game, if you go up to 20,000 feet and you look down at all the writing on game, it's a bunch of guys who realized that they were misled. They'd been told their entire life growing up that girls want nice guys, when what girls were actually doing was going for status. And so there was an exchange going on, but none of them had been informed of what was being exchanged. You know, they got taught that if you get a good job, if you bust your ass in school, you get a good job, you'll make a lot of money, you'll have a beautiful wife. What they realized is that many of the beautiful women were going for the bad boy scumbags. So the sluts right there were having a dishonest exchange. They were saying the exchange was going to be on these goods, when it was actually on those goods over there. The next thing that sluts will exchange for is merely attention. You know, one thing I see quite a bit of going on in public is women who are engaging in the mating dance, not because they're honestly engaged in the mating dance, but because they just want the attention. And these are the sort of girls that get sloppy drunk, and in the process of getting attention and sexually arousing a guy, they get seduced, led astray into the bedroom, and the next morning they feel like they got raped because they did not actually want to exchange sex for attention. That was just the scam they were putting forth. And so now the guy who thought it was sex for attention, he is getting a false rape accusation. Then there's the way that sluts will target men who are in relationships. You see, when you have a group of women that are all exchanging on open terms, they can all get along with one another. The market is open, the market is honest. And so the women that are going for a marriage contract will get a marriage contract, and they will not be threatened by the prostitutes because there are two different contracts. The men that want to get married can get married. The women that want to be prostitute, or the men that want to be with a prostitute can get a prostitute. It's open, it's honest. You can deal with the whole thing. Whereas when the slut enters the equation, she destroys women's position on the bargaining table. And so you'll see this, and I think many of you ladies out there have experienced this, that the sluts in high school drag down the market value of all women. See, the prostitute doesn't. The prostitute has, here's my price, and this is what you get. Whereas you ladies going for long-term relationships say, you know what, you'll not just get sex, you'll also get love, compassion, nurturing, etc., etc. So you're selling different goods. You know, one person's selling a motorcycle, the other is selling a sports car. You're not, it's an open marketplace. But the sluts, what they do is they drag down the price for everybody. And they also bully the girls that are trying to have a fair exchange. Because everything the sluts do is subversive. They benefit from a chaotic market, from one that is not regular, that is not regulated. And so they attack the girls who are being honest. And actually you'll see this amongst the feminists and the social justice movement. Half the time they're attacking marriage, the other half of the time they're attacking prostitutes. And they're using subversive arguments in both cases, but what it boils down to is that these women are sluts that want to use sex to manipulate, to scam people, and they hate the women that are being honest about the whole thing. And finally, I'd like to finish off with a quote from St. Augustine, which, one of my subscribers was good enough to leave in the comments in my last video. My apologies, friend. I don't remember your screen name. But it is the following. If they were ever to ban prostitution, the world would be inflamed with lust. You know, banning prostitution really isn't, it's not a Catholic value, it's not a Christian value, it's a Protestant blasphemy. You know, and hey, there's some nice Protestants out there. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not exactly a good Catholic. Now, I'm mostly a bad atheist. But this attempt to be perfect, to ban prostitution, to force everybody to live as saints, what this does is it opens us up to the sluts, to the predators, to the scam artists. Anybody that's being honest about what they're exchanging is fine in my book. I have no problem hanging out with whores. They're honest people. What I don't like are the sluts. And that's why I don't like feminists. Take care, folks. Aurini out.